Hi. So today I want to bring a specific card to the table. Yesterday I pulled card number 12, the Hanged Fairy, because I was using the Victorian Fairy deck. And I realized that I don't get this card often throughout my years of working with tarot. I just haven't worked with this card a lot. So I wanted to dive a little deeper. And as I started looking at as I do when I pull a card from a deck, I like to look at the way that is depicted in other decks as well to give some adjunct or peripheral or more cohesiveness to the card. And so I did that, and I wanted to share with you my process and what I found out. So I put together a little collective of this card. It's card number 12, called different, slightly different things in different decks, but mostly something like the Hanged One or the Hanged Man or the Hanged Fairy. And so starting at the top, that's the Mother Peace deck, and it's called the Hanged One in that deck. That's a deck by Karen Vogel and Vicky Noble. And then moving to the middle row to the left, starting at the left, is the Victorian Fairy Tarot. That's what I originally pulled yesterday, that card. And that is a deck by Linnea Weatherstone and illustrated by Gary Lippincott, one of my faves. And then that middle card is from the Celtic Tarot, which is created by Christopher Hughes and Chris Down. And then the card on the right in the middle row is the Hanged Man from a deck called Midnight Magic. And it is about, it's a tarot deck of mushrooms. I got that tarot deck at Barnes and Noble, and there are a bunch of decks that are look to be manufactured by the same company or creator in a sense. They're all packaged the same way, same size, same feel, same look, different themes. And I love this deck so much. It's pretty cool. The illustrations are beautiful. It's by Sarah Richards, and the small guidebook that comes with it is really succinct, really spot on, and shares a little bit about the biology and sometimes the history and just unique things about the mushroom in the card. And with all that being said, I have some reservations, not in using the deck, but in understanding who actually wrote the deck. Um, yeah, I just have some questions like, is this a AI generated deck in some regard, or is this actually written by that came out of this person's heart and soul? So some questions arise there. It's a great deck though. And then moving on to that bottom row is on the left, starting at the left, is the Hanged Man from the Rider Smith Waite, which is considered kind of the classic tarot deck. And then last but not least, the Mirror is in the Wildwood Tarot, from the Wildwood Tarot, which is Mark Ryan and John Matthews and illustrated by Will Worthington. And as you can see, that's kind of an outlier in the portrayal. Although as I get into it and really meditate on all the images, there is a collective feeling that one could come to meditating on each card separately. We may come to the same place ultimately, but that's the beauty of looking at different decks and having a well-rounded view of how these themes can be pictorially depicted in such different ways, but come to very similar messages. I think these are two of the most interesting cards to me. in that collective right now because they go together super well, and they have very different images, but there is a deep resonance between the images in that the feelings that are portrayed, at least for me. So yesterday I was working with the Victorian Fairy deck, or playing with the Victorian Fairy deck, and I pulled the Hanging Fairy. And what I see in that deck that I in this card that I don't see in the other depictions is there is still a sense of struggle that I see in this figure, in this fairy that's upside down, caught with a foot in the spider web. And it's like they haven't surrendered yet to the position that they're in. And I could really relate to this depiction of this card, rather than in the other decks. If you or in the other cards that I just showed, there is a sense of enlightenment in the head area, in the hanging head. A lot of those cards, if not all of them, had a light of halo coming out of the head, like, and there was no struggle in those cards. And in the Hanging Fairy, there's just this little hanging on of that, not quite surrendering to the position that they find themselves in here yet. And then looking to the mirror from the Wildwood deck, I just really love the symbolism in this card. And even though the figure reposed in the boat in the foreground is not can get lost, but it's not the first thing that's seen. It's not the most apparent part of the image, but for me, it's is what I gravitate to. It's this waiting, this figure looks somewhat dead and shrouded, and it just shows this absolute stillness. And there is a rope tied to that boat, and what I envision is that that's an anchor, and that shows like this stillness and not moving, like one is anchored in this position for now, and there's no activity. There's this boat is not going anywhere. It's anchored here for now. And then the more obvious is this serpentine mermaid half woman figure with her eyes shut and holding the moon, or an orb, in in her hand, in her palm, and a mirror in the other hand, but she's not looking at either. Her eyes are shut, and she's looks to be like deeply in communion with herself and all that's around her. And she's not upside down also. So I find that really curious too. That's why I love the Wildwood, is they have such a unique perspective on these cards, and it really enables it. It's like a bridge that I'm always trying to get to from the traditional way that the cards are depicted in a lot of decks, not all, but in a lot of decks. And the Wildwood is like usually like I'm just like, oh, I love like walking that bridge to between the cards, between the same cards of different decks. And the Hanging Fairy card is really has that same intoxicating or murky, misty, ethereal feeling as the mirror. And those poppies do speak to a deep letting go of the mind and what we think is true and real, and just surrendering to that otherworldly dream, like m- uh switching up reality, like really turning reality on its head, and allowing that, like surrendering to that vision of something completely different than what we thought. And when we look at these cards, those images are just so similar. And what I find, what these cards, the big message that they speak to me is like an emptying. It's like emptying, like turning upside down to let gravity, let everything we think to be true and real, let our mind empty, surrender to the process, be still, don't struggle, let it be, let it come out, let gravity pull all of this stuff out of our heads. And with that comes like new visions and enlightenment and new perspectives, and really a sense of light, a sense of lightness. And so I think of it as like an emptying card, a time to really allow ourselves to empty out our beliefs and what we think to be real. And I have to share this magic mushroom or midnight magic mushroom deck depiction with the velvet shank mushroom. And this, in the guidebook, it shares a little bit about the mushroom, which is a mushroom that does thrive in the winter months. And it has a antifreeze chemical in it that allows it to be productive and live in the winter months. And it does hang from trees and branches, and it will reorient itself no matter how it grows or on the branch. It will reorient itself so that the caps are pointing, so it releases its spores into the ground and is efficient in its reproduction. And that phenomenon is called gravitropism. So I can imagine that that means something like orienting to gravity, or surrendering to gravity, or something like that. And what I love about this deck also is that one could look at through this deck and it's all mushrooms, and one could think, I don't have a good sense of like what tarot is, because there's no people in the images. It's all mushrooms, and it's hard to, or it can be hard to be in, look at symbolism within these cards and glean like the messages that are traditionally known. But I don't think that that's true. I think that one could meditate on these cards and can. That is the beauty of tarot, is that tarot is a living entity that everybody has access to. And it is through our open heart and our open mind and our intuition and our souls that allow the messages to come through the images, and come through the invisibleness of tarot. Also, the 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 living being can come through us. And so I have full faith that one can read the Midnight Magic deck and come up with very resonant messages in the cards that that are related to the traditional tarot deck meanings. And that's not always that alone does not tell us that we're in touch with the tarot. We are in touch with the tarot in whatever way that the cards speak to us, whether they match a book or not, or match anyone else's perception or not. So I love this deck for the reason that it stretches us. It really can stretch us into these deep, intuitive knowings that we don't even sometimes know that we have. So I just want to wrap it up with this Mother Peace image. There's just some things that I really like in this image, the simplicity of it. There's trees, three trees. There's the moon. There's a figure, and there is a snake instead of a rope tying or tethering the foot to the tree. And there's also, if you look, there's kind of violet, pinkish um, root, energetic roots coming from those trees. Um, and so I love this, really shows the looseness of the snake that's wrapped around the leg. It's not tightly coiled, it's not strangling, it's just simply providing a support and something to hang from in this position. And there's such a surrender feeling to this card with the colors and the simplicity and the what I feel is this deep human connection to earth and the moon without any fluff. This figure has no clothes on. The symbology is very clear and concise in this card, and I really love it. It's simply this card in this deck is called Accepting Initiation, and as I've shared, it's a card of surrendering and letting oneself be in this upside down position, emptying oneself of what we believe and using this position to see clearly with that moonlight, see clearly what we may not see in daytime upright. So thank you for going on that little journey with me through that card. I do feel like I have a deeper understanding of the card since yesterday because I've been working with it these past 24 hours. And one other little tidbit that I'll share about the way that one of the ways that I do tarot is when I pull a major arcana card, which this is a major arcana card, and it's card number 12 in the arc from 0 to card 21, the Fool to the World, and or the World to the Fool, depending on how you look at that journey. We're always within the journey, and whether we start at the World or end with a Fool or start with Fool, we're still on that journey. And so what I look at when I pull a major arcana card sometimes is I look at the cards that are on either side of that card. So this is card number 12. And so I just look to card 11 and card 13 as helper cards or support cards or contextual cards that give me some perspective on where I'm at in the journey, where I may be coming from or going to in this phase of this card right here. So it kind of shows like a look back and a look forward. And so looking at card 11, which is interesting in itself because card 11 is sometimes justice and sometimes strength, depending on the deck that you read from. So card number 8 and card number 11 are switched in some decks. And sometimes card number 8 is justice. Sometimes card number 8 is strength. Sometimes card number 11 is justice. Sometimes card number 11 is strength. And so looking at either of those, justice or strength, justice is like, what have I been looking at, like looking at something objectively in terms of like fairness and equality and rightness, and am I coming from a position of where this is, let me pause here, collect my thoughts. I've been drinking nettles and I just needed to go to the restroom. I was getting a little antsy. So looking at justice, it's like, have I been looking at this objectively? Have I been being fair? Am I on the right track? What's the balance here? Is there a balance here? And or strength, like, wow, I am gearing up and finding the strength to get through this thing, this whatever I'm going through. It's the strength card. There's not much more that I want to say about that right now. The word itself, strength, card number 8 or 11, depending on what deck you're looking at. But moving through either justice or strength to that upside down emptying of what we think is real, getting a unique perspective, so that we balance out what may be unbalanced. And we have the strength to do that. You need strength to hang upside down from a tree. Um, and then moving through card number 12, the Hanged Man or the Hanged One or the Hanged Fairy, to card number 13, which is Death. And I think of the Wildwood depiction of that card with a ravens getting the last little bits of meat off a skull and picking it clean, like this nearly clean skull, but there's some last little bits of meat on that skull that they're getting the last bits of nourishment from this thing that is ready to be done with. There's Yeah, it's run its course. There's no more nourishment left on this piece of there's no more flesh with this this skull. And so thinking of that arc, that little arc of like card 11, 12, 13, helps me put the Hanged One into a perspective that really facilitates that letting go, having the death come after this card. And this card came to me in a reading that really now is making a lot more sense. And how I feel this card, because I can talk all day long about what I've read in a book and blah, 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 blah. And it really like what I feel when I look at this card. What did I feel when I was looking at this card? I felt so in the, which maybe I'll share again. So this is the card that I originally pulled. And what I was feeling was yeah, that there was still some struggle there, that I didn't exactly want to be caught in this web. And I was a little confused by this, confused by my position, and feeling a bit overwhelmed and not ready to quite surrender to this. And that it's uncomfortable. It was a bit uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable. And that is coming from this uh act of putting myself out there through this video, and worried that my perspective, or the way that I see tarot, or the way that I explain tarot, or the way that I work with tarot will not be received or will not be understood, and that my position is a little upside down. I'm not quite sure where I stand. And so this card really has taught me a lot in the past 24 hours of accepting my unique flair and my unique position, and letting go of the need to make my words fit into a nice little box that can be received by people. Because when I do that, it doesn't feel, when I try to have someone else's perspective, it doesn't, or portray something I've read in a book or whatever, it really doesn't land within me. And so this card has helped me um soften to the the beauty and the enlightenment of where I'm coming from, and allow that to be as it is, and to allow myself the surrender and the stillness and the quietness to receive the guidance that I receive, and to share that with others, because that is my intent and desire through this project. And I thank you for being here, and I look forward to sharing more.